I'm Luke.
And I'm Tyler.
And this is Mixed to Tape,
the podcast where we talk about audio, from recording to mastering and everything else in between.
We're here to start discussions and help answer your questions.
Let's get started. Luke, what's up, man?
Yo! How you doing?
I'm doing good. Anything new in your life these days?
Geez. Whole family's kind of sick right now.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, we had a very low-key weekend because everybody's just trying to, get better. And,
yeah.
Everyone's staying up late or getting up early with the kid. So it's boring here. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've been spending the last few days in our backwoods pulling out invasive species of plants, which is my lifelong project. Yeah. So yeah, it's like poison ivy. We have Japanese barberry. We have this vine called porcelain berry. So every spring I just try and pull them all out so they don't grow back and take over our woods.
Is poison ivy considered an invasive species? Or is it just annoying?
I don't know I think it is. I have to look that up, but it's very annoying. And I don't think I don't think I'm allergic to it. But we have friends and family that are very allergic to it. So
yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I spent my weekend. But it's good. Outside with family. I love it.
Yeah. So episode number 2.
Number two.
We are going to start our episode today with a segment that I am deciding to call right now in case you missed it. I have no music for it. Why don't you get us kicked off?
Sure. So in case you missed it, Pro Tools subscriptions are going up.
No!
Yes, but not all of them, though. So the ones that are not going up are the yearly subscription is the same. For Pro Tools Studio is staying the same. Pro Tools Ultimate Monthly is also staying the same. And what's going up is the Pro Tools Studio month-to-month subscription, which is going up 17% from $29.99 to $34.99, which isn't terrible.
It's $5.
And then Pro Tools Ultimate Perpetual Upgrade Plan, that's going up by $100, so 25% from $3.99 to $4.99.
These numbers feel kind of arbitrary.
I know. Why $100 for that?
Well, yeah, $100 only for the Ultimate Upgrade Plan and $5 for the Studio month to month, but the Ultimate Monthly is still the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the good thing is that now you don't have to, with their new pricing, is that, I have Ultimate, and so before I would have to, every year, do the upgrade plan, or else I would fall behind and have to pay an absurd amount of money to get back up. So now I could take a couple years off, or if there's some features that I want, then I'll decide, is it worth the $500 or is it not? So I stopped paying markers. That about a year and a half ago. I did get track markers. I have that, yes.
Is track markers worth the $100?
Right.
I remember when Pro Tools 10 came out with clip gain. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get it. And an engineer friend of mine was like, you have to, basically you have to spend the $100 for the upgrade because this is worth the $100.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, clip gain's great.
Yeah, no more Audio Suite or, trim plugins.
Yeah.
For doing that. Anything else?
Well, in case you missed it, Shure has announced a brand new microphone targeting podcasters like us, folk who are just getting started. They're calling it the MV7. This microphone sounds like it's meant to be very user-friendly compared to the SM7B that actually you and I are using right now to record this podcast. This microphone, it comes with a bunch of built-in denoising features, and it even has a cute little light bar right in the middle of it so that you can tweak it and, I don't know, distract yourself, or you can set the mood. It's actually cheaper than the SM7, which is sort of nice. It's only $280. The one thing that I really, really like about this microphone is it has a hybrid. It's an XLR and a USB output on it. And the reason I like that is I used to work at Guitar Center and I used to sell microphones, and I would often caution new engineers, new recording engineers from purchasing USB microphones because the ability to have an interface of some sort within your signal chain can really help improve your sound quality and give you a lot of options. The thing I like about this is you have the USB built into it, so you can plug it into your computer and you're ready to go. And then later, when you save a little bit more money, you can use your interface and then you can plug in the XLR.
Yeah.
So it's the best of both worlds. Microphone comes with even a little deplosive gizmo inside of it, or I guess a deplosive algorithm. Comes with a denoiser, so if you don't have a great ISO booth, you can use that. Even comes with a little reverb unit.
That's fun.
So, what do you got?
Auto-Tune is announcing version 11.
Auto-Tune.
Yeah, I'm not a big Auto-Tune user, but this sounds pretty cool. It has integrated 4-part harmony player. It allows users to create harmonies on the fly using one voice, which I think is pretty cool. Graph mode is a little easier to navigate. They refine their auto mode and graph mode GUI. Oh, and they have added smart MIDI hardware mapping. So MIDI keyboard controls can now be mapped to the plugin.
Hey, that's sweet.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Yeah, I don't use Auto-Tune. I use Melodyne all the time. And then if I need something auto-tuning, I just use Wave's real-time tune, which works good for my needs, and I hardly use that. So what about you? Do you use Auto-Tune at all?
Well, no. I'm mostly a Melodyne user, but that's most of the work I get is somebody sending me something that needs to be tuned. It
Same.
seems like auto-tune is something that you reach for when you're going for like a kind of vibe.
Yeah.
I like the 4-part harmony thing. That actually is kind of neat. It's like you can sing and you can like produce at the same time.
Yeah.
And you can do it all live, and that's kind of slick.
Sweet. Anything else, Luke? Anything else?
I got one more. In case you missed it, Tyler, did you hear about what happened to Grimes at Coachella?
Oh boy, I did. I've had nightmares like this in the studio where it's like I'm trying to plug a microphone in and it's not working and I can't figure out why and everyone's looking at me.
Yep.
But this was real life, Luke.
Yeah. So, in case you missed it, Grimes performed at Coachella and everything was going well until the second half when she ran into some technical issues. Her music would abruptly stop, and then she would get on the mic and tell the crowd that her tracks were not set to the correct BPM. But, you know, to her credit, she kept trying to troop on regardless. It's hard to watch.
Yeah.
You know, however you feel about Grimes and her music, you know, whatever, I feel bad, I think, just from like a person who has had to work with technology, watching a person work with technology and it just failing, and like it's hard to watch
In front of all
truly
your
is.
fans.
Yeah, in front of like a lot of people, being professionally recorded, and like, you know, and it's immediately all over Twitter. It's like, that's my nightmare.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's, you know, I don't think we're here to for the Schadenfreude necessarily. But I thought it was worth bringing up as an object lesson, honestly. And, you know, you should always check everything before you go live.
Yeah. I was watching a video where another DJ showed on his, what are they, the CD DJs, which I'm sure she's using. There's a button that you can have like 2 tracks playing at the same time, and one could be half speed and one could be the regular speed. And then you can hit like the sync tempo button. And he was demonstrating like this is what could have happened to her. And there's like no undo from that. So it could be just like a thing where it's just like you don't push that button and you push that button.
Maybe.
But still.
Some of the things I was hearing was like other people had prepared the tracks for her. It sounded like she was sort of crunching before the show, like she was writing some of this music like an hour before the show.
Right.
And the music wasn't prepared in the right way, and who knows?
Yeah.
Sucks. I think it sucks. I think
Yeah.
she wanted to put on a good performance. The audience wanted to hear a good performance, and it's hard to watch.
Yeah. Always have a contingency plan.
Yes.
Always have a backup. If this doesn't work, what's my out?
Yep.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting that she said at one point during the technical meltdown is that she said that there's never been a grime show without a major technical difficulty. Come on.
Come on.
And also it was interesting that no one came up on stage to try and help her. I was like, she was there all alone trying to sort it out.
I think I saw in one of the videos, I saw a little head pop up behind her at one point
Okay.
of somebody coming up. All that's going. Most of what's going around is like the worst parts of the montage.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure.
I didn't go to Coachella, so so that's our news.
You're all caught up
now.
now.
So our topic for today, we thought we would keep things chill and talk about analog versus digital.
All right, so yeah, let's start off with defining both of them. Luke, can you define what analog means or can mean to you?
Absolutely. Analog is essentially synonymous with continuous. In this case, when we talk into a microphone, the diaphragm in the microphone is vibrating and creating an oscillating electric current that is continuous. It is constantly moving backwards and forwards throughout the copper wire. That electricity can then be recorded onto a strip of tape using magnetic flux. There is no interruptions. It is a one continuous change in magnetic flux on the tape. Whereas digital is ones and zeros. It's discrete. So at some point, we can't define every single possible point on the graph of the sound wave.
Right.
We have to stop and sort of say, here's where we are, and then go forward in time a little bit, and then stop and say, here's where we are again. And that's how we are able to describe audio using ones and zeros. I think it's also worth pointing out there are digital hardware units that
Right.
we can use, but I would still consider them analog. There are like reverbs that you and I have both plugged into using XLR, using analog audio. It will very quickly convert the signal to digital, do its reverb thing, and then convert it back to analog, and then we can send it wherever.
Yeah.
EQ, compressors, things like that, all that fancy schmancy external gear with all the knobs and the lights on it, those are generally analog, depending. And then, of course, with digital, anything with a computer is digital. We are recording this onto our computers. We are talking over our computers. There are also digital consoles that exist. We can plug in a microphone into it. It will quickly convert it over to digital, and then we're dealing with ones and zeros until it spits back out into our tape machine or our speakers. What did I miss? Anything else?
No, I think you pretty much covered it all. So I guess we can kind of just go over each of them and talk about some pros and cons, between working with analog and with digital.
Why don't you get us started with some analog?
Yeah, sure. So with analog, you're kind of forced to make artistic decisions. Back in the day when you were recording on 4 tracks of tape, you'd have to make a decision. You'd have to bounce stuff down. You didn't have unlimited tracks like you do in Pro Tools. And I think that's a pro because you can't just say, oh, let me just do another one. Let me just keep adding this stuff. You're forced to, submix stuff down. I think you can have really good results with that, working with limitations in that way. It has unique sound characteristics, depending on if it's tube or FET, depending on how hard you can hit this gear. You can have really nice saturation to it, and adds lots of character. It looks cool. It feels cool. You can actually touch these things, and like if you're recording on an analog console, if you want to EQ something, you just look down and just grab a knob, turn it. Or if you have faders, you can just use your hands and make those changes right there without using your mouse to have to click around. What else? Do you have any pros for analog that you like?
Just the feel of it.
Yeah.
Which is what you were saying. I'm remembering there was a knob in the shop at the studio. There was a little knob, I think from like a Telefunken EQ or something. And I would go back there, assistants would go back there if they were having a tough time with a client or whatever. They would go into the shop and they would just click this thing back and forth. And it was the smoothest, most incredible action of a knob. I've never encountered anything like it. It felt amazing. You mentioned it forces artists to make choices, and that reminds me of I was recording a fiddle solo onto Pro Tools, onto digital, and I think we did like 50 some takes. And at what point are we just making more takes just because? Like at some point the engineer had to leave and he's like,
Right.
"Can you just take over because like I'm not needed here, the producer's not needed here. This guy's just going to like keep recording over and over again." I'll say for me, I think about when I listen to vinyl, especially like old vinyl. Let me say this a different way. When I listen to a lot of old music on like Apple Music,
Yeah.
I find myself drifting to like one or two songs on like a Supertramp album or a Queen album or whatever. When I listen on vinyl, I can't describe why, but all of the music sounds better. It feels better. I don't mind listening to the songs I don't necessarily like. And I haven't been able to define why,
Oh, that's interesting.
but like, yeah, like I'll totally listen to an entire side of a record and I'll flip it over and listen to the entire other side. And like every song feels as good as the next one.
Yeah.
I don't experience that with CDs at all. It's really, really rare.
I mean, do you think it's just the ease of being able to like jump around?
I've wondered that.
Yeah.
I think I don't know, maybe the fuzziness of the vinyl just sort of fuzzes everything together a little
Right.
bit, maybe. I don't necessarily feel that same way about new vinyl, though.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I feel like songs that are meant to be played on a digital medium, but we just like happen to also port them to vinyl, those just don't hit the same way for me.
Yeah, for sure. Like back when you wrote a record, you recorded a record, and you had your A side and your B side, and that's all the time you had. You had to make it fit. You had to get creative, which how you're going to end your A side and how you're going to begin your B side. Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, yeah. And also the mastering. I've talked to some mastering engineers about this new shift back to vinyl and how it can actually be kind of frustrating because vinyl is actually a kind of limited format, which I suppose this sort of starts drifting into the con
Yeah.
territory of analog.
Right.
But vinyl has a lower threshold for amount of content you can have, especially in the very lows or the very highs.
Right.
The decibel range of dynamic range that you can get with a piece of vinyl is lower than you can get with a CD. So when you are tracking into Pro Tools and mixing in Pro Tools, and your medium goes out and it's for CD and for distribution on Apple Music,
Right.
you have this huge swath of dynamic range, and then suddenly we got to like crush this down into a vinyl format. We have to roll out a bunch of the low end for fear of the needle bouncing out of the vinyl. We have to roll off a bunch of the high end. The fidelity just doesn't feel like it's quite there. So I really like old vinyl. I do.
Yeah.
But if it's newer stuff that's meant to be played on newer stuff, I think I prefer to listen to it on Apple Music or
CD
Spotify
or
or
stream.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so you mentioned you were drifting into the cons of analog. So why don't we go there?
Let's go there.
Let's just take it there. So yeah, some cons of the analog realm is that it's expensive. I mean, a recording console back in the day could cost easily $200,000, and that's just for the console itself. You still have to wire it up. You have to plug stuff into it. Have to record onto something. So
And you have to use all of it, right? If you neglect like one side of your console,
right,
it'll start to get dirty.
get dirty. Yeah, yeah. I remember when we were working at the studio, when it was slow and the rooms were open, you'd go in there, you'd patch in some pink noise and exercise your switches and your
Yep.
pots and your faders. And then some consoles over time need to, you need to put new capacitors in there. So you have to do a whole recap job, which is, the console goes down and then it's just a lot of time and money. You have to pay someone to do that. So high maintenance costs. So yeah, like in Pro Tools, I can have 100 1176s if I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
inserted on my song. But with analog, you usually don't have 100 1176s. Maybe you have 3 or 4 if you're very lucky. But usually you just have
If
one.
you have three or $4,000.
Yeah, right. So you have to, so that's a con because you can only use it once, one instance. Tape, if you're playing back on tape, the tape can degrade over time and with each playback. I was listening to an interview with Bob Clearmountain. He said that he remembers back in the analog, the tape days, they'd be recording something and while he was listening down to it would sound incredible. And then when the band came back and he played it back, he was able to notice a difference in the sound and it just wasn't like driving as much, So he was actually happy when it went to digital and every time you played back, it was the same. So,
Wow. I mean, credit to Bob for
yeah. It's like
being
you
able
wouldn't
to
think
hear
that
that.
guy would say that, right?
Yeah.
He did.
I remember researching Bohemian Rhapsody. I was obsessed with that song and the recording process for that song for a while. And one of the anecdotes from somebody who worked on the project commented that I think it was Roger Taylor looked over at the tape machine at one point while they were constantly like rewinding, recording, and he's like, "Hey, I can see through the tape right now." They had ground off so much of the
Right.
tape material, and they were like, "Oh shit!" And so then they had to like take the whole thing and record from one tape machine to another to copy it onto a new reel of tape. And of course, they had to like goose the hell out of the high end on everything they sent over there
Yeah.
to try to make up for all the high end that they lost as it was degraded. So yeah,
And that record sounds amazing.
yeah. Well, look, I love that song, and I could talk about Bohemian Rhapsody endlessly. But I would still say that's a bit of a con. It's a bit of
Yeah,
a
for sure.
problem.
Yeah.
So now, now let's talk about digital.
Yeah, recording on computers. If you have a powerful enough machine, you can pretty much have unlimited tracks, unlimited takes. If your hard drive's big enough, every time you play it back, it's going to sound exactly the same. The sound doesn't degrade with each playback. Yeah, just doing editing makes your life easier, but could be more tedious, I guess, because I remember doing editing projects where it's just like you're slicing in syllables of words and breaths from grabbing it from one place and bringing it to somewhere else. And yeah, it can really help you out, but it could also kind of make you pull your hair out a little bit,
Yeah.
with what you can do. Your sessions open up the same every time. We didn't talk about this with analog, but back when I was working at the studio, you'd recall a mix on a console and you're looking.
That's all you had to do. You hit a button and everything just recalled, right?
Yeah, exactly. It took 2 seconds.
You're right.
No, you had to go each channel and you had to match, like, because you use VCAs, save a snapshot of like where all your EQs settings and compressor settings were for each channel. And you have to go back channel by channel and look at the screen and match knob by knob. Sometimes these recalls were 48 channels. It took like 2 hours to do a recall. So now with the computers, you open it up, as long as everything is up to date and your computer's not crashing, your session's going to open up the same every single time, which is amazing. Especially these days where people want changes all the time.
Yeah.
And they'll call back 2 months later and be like, "Hey, can you just fix this one thing? I noticed this." Where with a console, it's like maybe they have swapped the channels around and things aren't sounding exactly the same.
Plus, there's all the patches you'd have to redo, the external gear you'd have to bring back.
It was always the moment of truth, like A being the mix between the mix that was recorded and what's playing back on the console was like, all right, here we go. Is it going to sound close enough? And yeah. Because with you can't touch sound. You just,
Nope.
you can't see it. So you're just using your ears and like, okay, I think it sounds right. And then you realize that you forgot to patch in like 3 things and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
or like something's completely off,
Yeah.
Digital, it could be relatively cheap. People can get started with recording with a cheap computer interface, an expensive microphone for, I don't know, $1,000.
$280 gets you a microphone that plugs right into your computer, apparently.
There you go.
So,
You don't even need an interface. It's already built in.
it's that and
Yeah.
a shitty laptop, and you're good to
There you
go.
go. In a bedroom. Don't forget your bedroom.
in a bedroom. And now you got the next Billie Eilish record.
She did it.
She did it. I don't think she used GarageBand though.
She did use. Wait, you said?
I think she used Logic, didn't she?
Oh yeah. She used Logic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other pros for digital for you, Luke?
I mean, it's clean as hell, which is a con as well. I think some of the noisiness of analog is part of its character.
Yeah.
But also it's clean as hell. For not that much money, you can plug a microphone right into your computer and you can get a sound that is cleaner than what, the bands like would drool over
Right.
in the 1970s.
Your Tascam, your 4-track cassette recorder.
Yeah. You have some really insane high frequency capabilities with digital. And, this is probably a bit of a spicy opinion, but analog is typically limited, despite the fact that it is analog. I mean, most external gear, especially like the older stuff, will actually roll off high frequencies after about 27,000 hertz. We have the ability to record up to 192. So, quick division, 96,000. If you're going for high fidelity, digital's got it.
Right.
We have the dynamic range, especially with, even with 24-bit is kind of insane. We can get up to we have the dynamic range of 0 to you've lost your ears, you've lost your ability to hear amount of dynamic range. And then we can push that even farther with the 32-bit stuff that's coming out.
Yeah.
Or that's already come out. It's been around for a while. But I suppose that all comes at a cost.
It sure does.
Similar to what I was just saying, it's, part of the problem with digital, I find, is you sort of lose a lot of that character. Artists and bands and whoever would go to certain studios because they were in search of a kind of sound. And you don't really see that too much anymore. I mean, you go to any studio and you're going to get a very similar sound. You truly are. How many projects have we worked on that were recorded at multiple studios?
Yeah.
And it worked, right? Most film projects these days, I know, are recorded at least 4 or 5 studios in the city.
Yeah. Easily.
Yeah. I remember working a bunch of movie dialogue projects, and they just had a whole signal flow that you just had to follow. Set this mic here, set this mic behind it, 6 inches behind it at a certain angle, and it was identical, and it would just slot right into the movie just like everything else. So it's a pro and it's a con, I suppose.
Yeah, well then with digital recording you have to worry about latency.
Yeah.
If you're working on a mix or something and you have to punch something in, you put your mic on record and there's huge latency. So you have to worry about that. Usually what you do in that case is you'd bounce a mix down, play that back without all your plugins. So you're not hearing all that tremendous amount of latency. But the latency is pretty good. Like if you're just tracking a band, the converters spit out the audio before it hits the computer. So you're not hearing that conversion. So you're not hearing that latency there. And even we use here back at the studio that I work at now, and it's digital, and the latency is so low that recording the band, no one notices it, Well,
and even if you want to do the bounce out of Pro Tools real quick to access a piece of analog gear and then jump right back into Pro Tools, you have to account for latency there.
Yes.
Because you'll get 4 milliseconds or something even, but it's enough that you'll get comb filtering.
Yeah, right. With analog console, with electronic patches, you patch it in and the sound's just there. There's no latency at all, which is a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, harder to troubleshoot. More things could go wrong. If your drivers aren't up to date or your computer's just not happy that day, it doesn't want to start, or it's just giving you issues. Yeah, it could be harder to troubleshoot, for sure.
So many moving parts. We were trying to troubleshoot something before we started recording this.
Yeah.
My microphone was cutting in and out on...
Yeah, for me, I couldn't hear you. It's every other word.
And so we had to just find a weird workaround, and it's working now.
It's working, and you sound lovely, and I can hear every word that you say, Luke.
Yeah. Or how many times you've been working on a computer and just kernel panics.
Yeah.
And that's just a shoulder shrug. You're like,
right.
Okay.
Gonna just turn everything off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gonna turn everything off now. Try again. Which, you know what? I remember we would have to do that on the consoles at the studio. You'd have to reboot them.
Yep.
Either the computer, the console computer, if things weren't working. Which every time you'd reboot one of those, you'd have to just cross your fingers that nothing would blow up.
Yeah. So I don't know about you. I don't have a beef with analog.
No, neither do I. I love analog.
And I don't hate digital. So at the risk of sounding namby-pamby here, I don't know. I like both. Why do you like analog?
God, it's just easy. Every week for Sesame Street, we have an 8-piece band that records in Brooklyn at Studio G. And the whole front end of that studio is analog. They have great consoles and outboard gear that I love to use, and it just sounds great. It's just easy to work on analog, and just the workflow is just so easy. What about you?
Maybe it's just because of my upbringing, but I really, really love tracking analog.
Yeah, for sure.
Being able to just, I don't know, plug everything into a console. I can route everything on a console. It's straightforward. Honestly, it's straightforward. I can do some pretty solid mixing and get some pretty great sounds, and then I can get that into Pro Tools. And then honestly, once I'm in Pro Tools, I prefer to stay in Pro Tools until I'm done. So like when it comes to mixing, I'm more of an in the box kind of guy. That's probably just because I'm younger.
Yeah.
But I really like the options that being in digital provide me when I'm in the mix stage. Being able, like you said, to buy one plugin and to use it as many times as I want,
right,
is great. And I'm really hoping that no plugin company ever figures that out. Starts charging us per instantiation.
Could you imagine?
Yeah. I really love I love the visual. That's really helpful. Even the simple power of editing is so much nicer.
Yeah.
And so much more powerful than what analog can give you.
Yeah. I agree with you 100% on that. Well, maybe 99% on that. For the work that I do, yeah, I agree 100%. But I did a few projects when I was working at Avatar where the engineer would, the project was recorded in Pro Tools, and he would bounce everything out to two 24-track machines.
Mm-hmm.
And he would sync that up to the SSL console and mix off of the two 24-track machines.
Oh, wow.
And it was lovely. It was so nice. There's no screen you're looking at. You're just listening. If you want to go back to the top of the song, you have to wait 30 seconds or something until the machines rewind. You go back to the top. It was really a lovely experience. But not everybody has that luxury,
Yeah.
to do that. But I always remember that.
What you just said reminded me. I have heard a number of, especially older engineers, mention or bemoan the loss of the rewind time.
Yeah.
And how it really forced everybody to just like slow down and chill out and like take a beat while, you had to wait like, who knows how long, 30 seconds, a minute while this thing rewound back to zero. And I've also heard a lot of engineers bemoan one of the first things you said, which was we've harped on this a couple times, but having to commit to a take and like, can I truly do this better than what I just did? Like a real like come to Jesus moment, like, can I do this or can I not? I think I can. And then, oh shit. You said you told the story about the engineer who mixed on tape and how nice it was to just have to listen. And I wonder if you and I would prefer it more.
Yeah. Oh man, if someone would pay me to do that, I'd do that every day. Heck yeah.
Yeah. We just, I don't know about you, but I'm not sure if my landlord would be okay with me carting up however much those Studer 800s are.
Oh my God. Hundreds of pounds.
Seriously. And I need two of them.
And a tech.
In my little bedroom. Take that, Billie Eilish.
Yeah. Take that, upstairs neighbors.
Yeah. Any final thoughts before we before we wrap up?
No, I don't have any final thoughts. Yeah.
This is fun. All right. Then I think that's it.
Yeah. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe. We put out new episodes every other Thursday. If you liked what you heard, take a second to give us a review. Every review helps new listeners find us. If you'd like to support us, you can find us on Patreon. We have some perks for our new subscribers and plans for more as we continue and grow. If you'd like to join the conversation, find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching Mixed to Tape Podcast. If you'd like to contact us, write us at mixedtotapepodcast@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear your questions. Thanks, and we hope to see you next time.